Finance.
Yeah, let's see.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah,
good
we've
luck.
got what 15 more days till qualifying's over. So you can still pay to get on the back. We've got market.
Inspector.
So once that hits, then we know for sure.
All right.
Okay.
Well, good luck.
I appreciate it.
So Long Flower Starkey, we're expecting
You
only.
guys aren't building that bridge
Already
here.
here, so we got.
Good morning. Thank you all so very much for the order and begin by having roll call, please.
Jim Holton. Commissioner Janet Long.
Here. Good morning. Thank you all so very much for
Commissioner Catherine Starkey. Commissioner Jeff Holcomb.
the order and begin by having roll call, please.
I don't know where to turn it.
Here.
Commissioner Renee Flowers.
Present.
Jim Holton. Okay. Commissioner Janet Long.
Here. Good morning. Thank you all so very much for.
Commissioner Catherine
Can you come? It's her, she has a delayed voice on her iPad. Can you come turn that off for her, please?
Commissioner Renee Flowers.
Present.
She's replaying the YouTube.
There you go.
Turn her speaker off.
Turn the speaker or the volume down.
She needs to log into the Zoom instead of the YouTube channel.
Or she can just go to the TBARTA's website and pull up the agenda.
To get the email or. Good.
How's the campaign?
I'm good.
I never get this stuff.
That's good.
I'm so sorry.
My grandson was, not graduation, but the promotion
Would
ceremony.
you excuse me, Madam Chair? I'll be
Yes.
right back.
Yes, ma'am. Had you completed roll call?
Yes, ma'am, that does give us a quorum.
Okay, thank you so very much. If we could all stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance and then take a moment of silence for the incident that happened in Uvalde, Texas, please. Mr. Holcomb, could you start us off with the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And just a moment of silence, please, for those who lost their lives and for the loved ones that are remaining, that are dealing with the unfortunate circumstances. Thank you. Do we have any public comment? Anyone in the audience wishing to speak? Any public comment? No.
We have no public comment.
Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. Under the consent agenda, it's the request for the approval of the April Finance Committee meeting minutes. Jesus, I can't even talk. Does anyone have any questions, concerns, or do we have a motion for approval?
Make a motion.
We have a motion to approve the Finance Committee meeting minutes. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Do we have any that are opposed? Motion carries. We now have our information items from our very own Melanie. If you would like to come forth and provide us with the presentation this morning. It can't be that bad. Good morning. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Good morning.
Okay, so the month of year to date through April 2022, we had a net surplus of $415,000, and this was $12,000 under the budget amount of $403,000. So looking at the revenues, we were like still under budget for $622,000, and this is primarily due to the government study, the timing of that study.
Right.
So and then expenses, we were under budget $634,000, and that was due to the professional services, the consulting of that study. Our accounts payable at the end of April was $314,000. Our accounts receivable was $669,000. And at the end of April, we had a cash balance of $740,000.
Okay.
Wrap up the summary for the end of April.
Thank you. Do we have any questions regarding the financial report that's been provided by Melanie? We're above water. We may not be exactly where we would like to be, but again, because of the gondolas, because of the gondola study, which we requested that they move forward with that, taking St. Pete out of that framework, which is what we decided based on their comments. So any questions? Do we have a motion with a second to accept the April financial report?
So move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we move forward with the April financial report. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Do we have any that are opposed? Thank you. Next, our fiscal year 2021 audit results. Brian? Good morning.
I'm a signing director with Mars now, or CLA for short. I do more work out of the Secret Office, but as you probably worked with Lance Smith before, we cover the entire state of Florida, so it's definitely a pleasure to be up here again. I do work with a number of other entities in the Tampa Bay region, so what I have for you this morning is a very short presentation, very version. And as you have the financial statements, I would say the biggest thing you want to take a look at is discussion and analysis. That will give you a lot more information. And we do acknowledge that it's several months after your fiscal year end, so the information is a little stale. So we'll pay attention to the results more than anything. Just a couple of disclaimer slides you can read if you wish. High-level information. So as we're going through this this audit, we do a couple of things. We look at the financial statements for your fiscal year ended September 30, 2021, in accordance with what's called government auditing standards. We also do what's called a federal single audit, where we do a risk assessment of those federal grants received. Risk-based approach includes inquiries with management, and we select programs, which in this case we will federal transit formula grants on highway planning and construction. Probably those are your biggest grants, so not a big surprise to you. We also do what's called an examination over your compliance with 218, 415 Florida statutes, which is the investment provisions.
Right.
And then we do some agreed upon procedures over the National Transit Database, or the NTD report, which was issued back in January, and that was a thing report. It's all done and submitted. So we do issue several reports when we go through this. The first one there on the top left is the independent auditor's report, an unmodified opinion or a clean opinion. That's what you want to have. Second down, we also issue an independent auditor's report on internal control over compliance and on reporting and other matters. And it kind of skips over to the right-hand side, but we did not identify any material weaknesses or no deficiencies. There is always a however in our reports that something could have existed that we may not detect because we're not rendering an opinion on your internal controls. And then we do, the third one down on the left, we do issue an independent auditor's report on compliance on each major program that I mentioned on the previous slide. No material weaknesses, no deficiencies, excuse me, and no other matters we communicate. So overall, a clean audit, as clean as you can get. In addition to the financial statement packet, we've also been provided about a 3-4 page governance communication letter. That's kind of like your Cliff Notes version of what we did during the audit. It's our communication to you. It goes over things like qualitative issues of the accounting practices, things like no new policies in 2021, no difficulties encountered during the audit, which is always a good thing. No corrective misstatements. It does identify an uncorrected misstatement. You can read through that, but we work with management, director, accounting, and said, that's not material. And no disagreements. They do sign management does sign a representation letter, so you have access to that if you wish. And then there's a couple of other things in that letter as well. Again, clean. As we go through the audit, this is just a slide to tell you that we look at entity level controls, those policies, procedures, what's the tone at the top, and then we get down into a little bit of minutia, what's the cash controls, what's the controls over the revenues coming in, the payroll and benefits, expenditures, and of course, how you financially close the report, which part of that is the presentation that Melanie gave a little while ago. It's keeping you up to date with financial information before it gets to scale. So during the audit approach, we conduct interviews, we do what's called a risk assessment, we We use some data analysis techniques, what we call substantive procedures, which is basically getting down to looking at invoices. And then, of course, we look at reports and things like that. Few financial highlights. And I'll direct you more to the management's discussion and analysis. That's going to give you a little bit better idea without going through the full financial statements, but if you want to, please do. I mean, overall, if you're looking at fiscal year ended 9/30/2020 versus September 30, 2021, there's a decrease in assets. There's also a decrease in liabilities, but a lot of that is tied to the amount of grant activity and the timing of that activity. So I wouldn't get concerned over a decrease. However, the very positive thing is the second line at the bottom, that unrestricted net position of 240, almost 250,000 compared to negative 45,000. Again, that's, plays around with some of the timing of member contributions when you're spending some of that, some of the grant funds. So again, I wasn't here to do the presentation that Lance probably gave last year, but he probably wasn't too worried about the negative net position. Again, timing, and you've already seen financial statements for at least 7 more months since then. A couple of items just to be aware of going forward. So that's, we don't want to leave you in the dark here. There is 2 new accounting standards. One's going to be applicable for your September 30, 2022 fiscal year end. The next one will be applicable for the 2023 fiscal year end. One's regarding leases and basically what is called right to use assets. May not have a big impact at TBARTA because of the services it used provided by entities like the SDA and others, and consultants. But we will work with management on that and identify if there's anything. Ultimately, what could happen is some additional assets and liabilities could be on your government, the top level financial statements. And the one applicable for 2023 is regarding subscription-based technology. As you probably know, there's a lot of software that you don't buy anymore. You're just subscribing to it for a period of time. Well, if it's a long period of time as defined by the standard, there's going to be additional liabilities. And for those of you that are with cities, other governmental entities, counties, this is affecting them as well. So it's just not TBARTA, it's every governmental entity in the nation. So just to know that those are on top. We'll work with management during the summer. We'll identify how however they need. So I would like to say thank you to the executive director, Director of the county. I didn't actually work on the audit. I'm covering for Lance Schmidt. So on behalf of him and behalf of CLA, I do want to say thank you to all. Kim Pavletti, the senior that worked on the engagement, she explained a few things to me. I talked to Lance the other night and said, what do I need to know? He's like, it's a great group of people. He goes, they'll ask some questions. He goes, just be prepared. I said, thank you. I actually talked to him when he was headed out of town. He had a family obligation many months ago. So I'll, say thank you for him. Thank you for us. Any questions?
Thank you.
Chairman?
Yes,
Just-
Mr. Holcomb.
So since they said we were going to ask questions, I feel obligated. And it's kind of a little off to the side question, but because I studied accounting in college, and good God, I wanted to fall asleep during auditing class. But in general, we had a 501c3 commit fraud in our county. And it wasn't because the numbers that were coming in and the numbers coming out. It was because they set up a fraudulent bank account that looked like the 501c3 that the person who was committing the fraud was able to set up. So in your auditing research, do you do any types of searches of like, hey, did, no offense,
They call them shadow accounts.
yeah, there where someone might set up a TBARTA looking like account or XYZ organization account. Do you do any searches like that, or is there any good ways to do searches like that, I guess? Or
I know as we're going through and we're looking at, and this may not be exactly, but it may work as well. As we go through and we're looking at vendor payments.
right,
Sometimes it depends on the entity, the risk assessment. I don't know if we did here, but we'll go out and go, okay, here's a vendor entity, any organization that you're paying money out to, or any organization you're paying money out to. And we might verify that information versus Sunbiz. And if they're not on Sunbiz, can we verify it somewhere else? And then, of course, we're looking at the controls and going, how is an entity set up? is there somebody that looks at it, somebody that approves it? That way there's at least two people, even for, XYZ cleaning services. Is there two people that set that up, or is it a fraudulent?
Yeah.
entity? And unfortunately, we have worked with some entities, as you can imagine, throughout the nation, that there's been fraud in entities. Most fraud is not detected by an auditor,
Right.
and that's just the simple facts. It's the control.
Internal
that exists
controls.
within the entities, tip lines or open door policies for small organizations. Now, if an entity comes to us and says, hey, we think there's something going on, we just kind of scratched the surface, you're in here the next day, start the audit, we can assist with that. Because fraudulent doesn't, our procedures are not designed to detect fraud, however, if we detect controls, we will advise you of that. And the one thing we can't ever do is prove that it is fraud. We're not a judge or a jury, of course, but we can pull together all the evidence. So we have worked with entities. There was one last year, the June 30 entity. We had to stop and pause on the audit, and they actually brought in another firm because of the severity of what it was and the timing of what it was. And it was an entity that dealt with a lot of cash, lots of cash, lots of opportunity. But yeah, a good point, because there is a lot of 501c3s. I mean, even driving down the road, the guys, got a boot or a hat or something, stop on the side of the road and say they're with 501c3. My brain goes into overdrive, professional skepticism, personal skepticism. But we can design something for sure. If there is a need, we can do that. So please reach out to us. Thanks.
Do you have any questions, Commissioner?
Okay.
Any questions, Commissioner? I just have one. For the deferred inflow resources, did you have a dollar amount attached to that? It appears as though we may be waiting to be reimbursed for certain funds. That's on page, it's on the government-wide statement of net position. So that would be page 13 of the document that was sent to us.
Deferred inflows of resources. Since you all are in Florida retirement system, that is a function of the actuarial evaluation that the Florida retirement system does.
Okay.
So you personally are not waiting on money. There's also deferred outflows. And basically, that liability at the very beginning, the Florida retirement system, health insurance subsidy system puts out an act for as well. You are a proportional share of that, probably, I don't know the number, but 0.001 something. It's a very, very minute share. So those deferred inflows or outflows are actuarial calculations based on, for example, the markets did very well through September 30, 2021, but they take that increase in the market, which would decrease the liability, and then spread it out over a number of years.
You on the wrong one. The one before that. Certain grant-related receivables are not available to pay for current period expenditures and therefore are reported as deferred inflows of resources in general fund. You're the one underneath it. You're talking.
The other one that you have is a difference between your fund level statements where you budget at and your government one. Those would be amounts that didn't come in within 90 days.
Okay.
Receivables. So you may have $1 million of grant receivables, 500 came in, that's what's left. So it's
Okay.
just a timing issue. That's a policy that you set, probably set many years ago, that's 60 days. Not, something to consider. We do have entities that say for grant receivables, we don't have a 60-day window of when to record revenue at the fund level, because they want those revenue that's going to match a little bit. But that's something we can certainly talk about going forward. That's a policy that you all have.
Yeah, that's what, because sometimes it certainly will change your bottom line when it comes to revenue resources. So,
It will, because if
Yeah.
you were to fast forward 3 more months, that's going to increase your fund balance.
okay. But thank you. You at the one underneath. Do we have a motion to accept the auditor's report? I'm sorry, I did not ask if you had any questions. Please forgive me. Do we have a second? To approve? We have a second.
Comments, Madam?
Yes, ma'am.
I would just like to send a kudos out to Melanie for all the hard work that she has done on our finances since she started. Things have certainly turned around and I'm very happy to hear that. And thank you to Debbie for all the support that you have provided as well.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Great report and welcome. See, we weren't so bad. So please go back and tell your team that we are harmless.
I will send Lance a text message when I get out my vehicle and tell him there that, because I know he wants to hear.
All
He
right.
may be at Disney or somewhere with his kids and beautiful daughters, but he would want to hear that.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming. You're welcome. And
Make it a little more dramatic than since he's having fun. We're working.
My husband would say that's not fun.
well, listen, he's bringing up shadow companies over here, you know. So I'm sure antennas start going up like, what is he talking about?
We do have a great group of people, especially at our California offices. That's all they are certified fraud examiners. That's all they do. 2,000 hours a year. That's all they work. They don't do traditional audits. They just. So,
Okay. Thank you very much. Is there any other business to come before the Finance Committee? Yes, ma'am.
I heard a motion and a second, but
Oh.
I didn't hear the vote.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. I'm sorry because we started laughing.
Aye.
Aye. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Mr. Holcomb got me off my game. No. Now, is there any other business to come before the Finance Committee for TBARTA? Having none, meeting adjourned. Thank you all so very much. And again, thank you for bearing with me on my tardiness and my absence. Following will be the policy
Yep.
committee. We're trading because you got to come over here.
I do?
Because you got to. Okay, well, you can stay where you are, I guess.
I'll let you run that.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Do we need to wait a minute or can we just start?
Does anyone need a break? Okay, we will roll right into the policy.
What time is it?
9:35.
Oh, okay.
Mm.
I can't see the clock.
Oh, yeah, I was just a little over, just a little bit.
So I will call to order the May Policy Committee meeting. Can we please have the roll call?
Jim Holton. Commissioner Catherine Starkey.
Here.
Commissioner Janet Long.
Here.
Commissioner Jeff Holcomb.
Here.
Commissioner Renee Flowers. That does give us a quorum.
Did everyone, did you answer?
Yeah, Janet, did you say?
Oh, you did say here? Okay, I didn't hear. So I have this cold in my, I don't hear well. I'm almost over it. Okay, now's our time for public comment. So persons wishing to address the board can do so in either of two ways. Comments no more than 400 words may be sent to publiccomment@tbarta.com and will be read into the record. Written comments must be received no later than the day before the meeting. Comments must include the name, address, organization, and topic or agenda item. See staff prior to the meeting to complete a comment card, and you will be able to provide comment for 3 minutes when recognized. Do we have anyone wishing to comment before the committee?
No public comment.
Okay, so we will move on to number 4, the consent agenda items. Is there any discussion on the April Policy Committee meeting minutes? Seeing none, I
Move
would.
approval of the
Thank you.
April Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. We'll move on to the action items. And we're on A, DBE program and goal. Morning.
Morning, Madam Chair, Al Burns, Director of Procurement with PSA Staff Resource. This morning, I'm extremely happy to be here this morning as TBARTA is about to embark on a new program, which is the DBE initiative, which stands for Disadvantaged Business Enterprise. DBE programs are really routine at all federally funded FTA recipients have a DBE program. As a matter of fact, today we finished we finished our triennial review, and DBE was one of the areas that was under review, and I'm pleased to say, as we DLO for PSDA, and we passed for fly colors. With that, David, the executive director, Mr. Green, reached out to me and said, Al, the upcoming funding that we anticipate, different procurements that we anticipate, he wanted to get out in front and start developing a DBE program. So him, one of my coworkers, Ms. Maggie Soto, David and I, we started putting pen to paper and developed a DBE program for TBARTA. DBE programs are used for all grant recipients that receive funding over the amount of $250,000. Like I said before, we anticipate getting receiving. I'm sorry, I apologize. As I said before, we anticipate, TBARTA anticipates receiving over $250,000, so we're starting the program now. The program is regulated under 49 CFR Part 26, which is the federal regulation that governs the administration of a DB program. So what we did was we evaluated all the upcoming TBARTA procurements and TBARTA contracts, and we came up with the DBE goal of 2% for TBARTA as an agency. So before you, Mr. Chair, or Madam Chair, the action is approval of the DBE Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program and triennial goal of 2%. If there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Board members, any questions? Go ahead.
Mr. Burns knows I'm gonna ask this question. So we're starting at 2%.
Yes, ma'am.
What is your best guess, I guess, if as it relates to maybe over the years or over time, kind of ratcheting that percentage up?
Very good question. As TBARTA grows and gets additional more funding, the projects will continue to grow, and then we'll assess and more than likely, especially under construction, if we ever break ground or anything like that, then the DBE participation would probably increase.
Okay, thank you.
Can you give me a good example of a business that would be able to benefit from the program, or just a good example of situation?
I can give you several.
Sure.
TBARTA, primarily the procurements or the contracts that I've administered in my tenure here at TBARTA have mainly been Brooks Method, or in Florida they call CCNA, which is architectural engineering type of procurements for studies, etc. When we go out for those types of procurements, there's often DBE or minority business participation opportunities in the field of engineering, engineering, planning, and a lot of times the major firms, the H&TBs of the world, WSPs of the world, they already have connections with all the minority or DBE firms out there. So there's plenty of opportunities, and in this instance with TBARTA, for some upcoming studies and future engagements, I see there are a lot of potential for DBs in the area of civil and architectural and engineering and planning.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we need a motion?
Yes, ma'am.
Move
Any more
approval
questions?
of the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program and triennial goal of 2%.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we are on.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. We are on number 6, and I see we have someone here in person. Mr. Pierce, state legislative update.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members. Thank you for the opportunity to be in person again, not in Tallahassee. Wrapped up special session number 2 last night. Last time I stood before you, I was hopeful that we'd be able to tell you kind of where we'd have some finalization on the budget process. We do not. The governor still does not have the budget. We anticipate the governor will get the budget sometime within the next 7 to 14 days. When that happens, at that point, we'll know exactly where we stand with regards to our 1.375 that we have in the budget. just to give you all kind of a synopsis of what we've done over the last month to build up support for our appropriation. Number one, I know that our chair has talked directly to the Senate President. We've had some conversations with the Senate President's office as well. I know the President Simpson's trying to be helpful behind the scenes with the governor's office to support it. Number two, the Tampa Bay Partnership reached out and did a joint letter with a number of business organizations from Pasco, Hillsborough, and Pinellas counties. There's probably about 12 to 15 business organizations that signed a letter of support that went to the governor's office in support of the appropriation, which I think is important, by the way, to show the business community support for it. So we did that. We had some great media support. I know that Chris and his team reached out and did a transportation disadvantage kind of summit, I'll call it. That I think had 2 or 3 news stories, a couple of articles, and all of that's been generated, has gone to the governor's office again to kind of build up some support there from a media standpoint. Our Citizens Advisory Council, they've reached out. I know a number of their members of their group have reached out as well, sending letters of support. And last but not least, we've done a good job of reaching out to a number of different groups that actually provide transportation disadvantage services in the Tampa Bay region. And they've had users for transportation disadvantage that uses services for the region, reaching out to the governor's office as well. So I think we've done everything we can do to build up support for the appropriation. And at this point, I think we're just making sure that as I did yesterday, continuing to remind the governor's office of all the support that's out there. There was a really good article in the Tampa Bay Business Journal that came out on, I think, Wednesday of this week, or Tuesday or Wednesday. I think it was kind of a good summary of, I think, why it's so important to the region. And I sent that as one additional follow-up, just making sure that they know there's a lot of people that's watching this appropriation, which is something that's a little bit different in the past. A lot of times it's just TBARTA out there on an island saying we need funding. But I think we've done a good job this year of getting some outside organizations and groups to support it as well. So I anticipate, if I was guessing, I think there's a strong possibility the governor will probably get the budget next week. And I would think by the end of next week, I think we'll have a good idea of where we stand. So again, if I'm guessing, I think the veto list is probably done. I know they've been briefing the governor on a number of projects for almost the last month. So I would anticipate once the budget's presented to him, I think the action would be pretty quick. So happy to answer any questions from anybody on the board.
Can you remind us the source of funding and how it's different this time versus our ask previously and where the money comes from?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that's a great point. So just to put it on the record once again, a lot of the previous years, it's been trust fund dollars out of the Transportation Trust Fund. When that's happened, there's a direct impact on some of our partners, such as PSTA, for example. This year, all the dollars that are there, it's non-recurring general revenue, which should have no impact on any of our partners and no impact directly on Department of Transportation. So Secretary Gwynn should have no direct impact on his budget, which is good. It is non-recurring revenue, so the $1 million for TD Tampa Bay is non-recurring general revenue, as well as the $375,000 for operations is also non-recurring general revenue.
Thank you.
That gives us a better chance.
I think so.
Hopefully, yeah.
I hope that gives us a better chance as well. Yes, ma'am.
And Ron, question that budget as a total, I mean, I would imagine we had record numbers last year plus the federal money. So do you think the veto pen will be lighter this year?
So we've heard both. Just to remind everybody in the room, last year's budget was just about $101 billion. Governor vetoed almost $1 billion to bring it down to about about 100. This year it's $112 billion. Again, a lot of that's non-recurring revenue. There's $4 billion of federal funds in there. We've heard both. We've heard that the governor's not going to veto a lot. And we've also heard that it's the largest budget in our state's history. And so I think they're going to take a very close look and could veto more than we anticipate. So my guess is we end up somewhere in the middle. I do anticipate I think there'll be vetoes. I think there will be vetoes because of the fact that it's a $112 billion budget. And I think some of the decisions that are being made right now to Tallahassee aren't as much about the election in 2022, but the potential election in 2024.
So on that budget, I'm curious what it is per capita, because yes, we have a greater budget, But we also have a lot more people who have moved here, so I think sometimes we have to take that into account as well.
Well, and I'll take that a step further, and I'm sure the per capita went up slightly, but a lot of the growth in the budget is non-recurring revenue. So it's not like we grew by $12 billion of recurring revenue. So we were able to cover a lot of the recurring needs of the state. And remember, education and healthcare alone make up over 70% of the entire state budget. There's a lot of recurring revenue that goes in those two silos. I'll tell you the $12 billion, about $4 billion of that is federal. You probably have another $3 billion of non-recurring general revenue from the state. So a lot of that. So next year's budget will not be $112 billion. It's going to come back probably, towards 106 to 108, probably. I would guess.
Interesting. Okay, any other questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Very good. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
And do we have Harry Glenn on? Hi, good morning, Harry.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Sorry I can't be there in person. I don't have as much to report as Ron. It's kind of quiet here in Washington. The House has been in middle of a 2-week recess period for the Memorial Day recess, and the Senate left yesterday for a 10-day recess for Memorial Day. So things are kind of quiet here. The big news in Congress, I guess, is the House and Senate Appropriations Committee are embarking on their fiscal year 23 appropriations process, which is a good thing. They're actually getting started early this year with a real push to try and get some of their budget work done. Maybe not before the end of the fiscal year on September 30th, but at least before the end of the calendar year. You recall, they didn't finish up their work this year until March 11th, almost 5.5 months into the fiscal year. So there seems to be real pressure to get it done this year. And that's a good sign. And the numbers look good for continued support, robust funding for transportation programs, including transit. That, in addition to the infrastructure money, next year will be the second year of the 5 years of enhanced transit and infrastructure funding. So that's all good news as you look forward to future projects with TBARTA. Second item, there was an announcement 2 weeks ago from the administration. They appointed Veronica Vanterpool as a new deputy administrator for the Federal Transit Administration. You recall Nuria Fernandez was confirmed as the administrator last year, and she's been on board. That's the first time in 6 years that there was a confirmed administrator at FTA, which is great. They've been working under an acting administrator for the entire previous administration. So it's good that now there's a number 1 and a number 2 in position. Veronica Vanderpool, we had a group from Pinellas up in Washington in March and actually met with her to talk about the Pinellas Sunrunner project and some other things. And she's very enthusiastic about BRT and about innovation in transit. And so I'm sure at some point it would be good to David to meet with her and give her a brief on what TBARTA is